We can help customers receive money from about 80 different countries today across 32 currencies. And we process about $200 million of payments annually right now, which in our category, we are the first company to get this license.
This whole payments, cross-border payments, verticalization of payments, or simplification of payments, some of this was clearly an idea and domain which was interesting.
The very, very simple thing that happens is somebody's bank account gets debited and another person's bank account gets credited. But to make this payment happen, there needs to be a network which is able to process this payment or process this information. I really also think people should think whether they really need external capital. It's very important to think what kind of business am I building. What happens is transparency gets lost. So the receiver does not know how much money was sent, how much money got deducted in fees in between, how much money was received, at what rate of exchange did I receive my currency. The vision is large and we really want to build a global company coming out of India. If we can become this cross-border bank, which allows people to receive money, send money, probably even hold money, make payments out of that, comply, potentially even apply and get credit for their international payments. That's the vision for us.
Welcome to the Day One podcast by Elevation Capital, where we chronicle stories and journeys of founders we partner with. Today, we are very excited to welcome Srivatsan, co-founder of Skydo, who along with Movin is disrupting an age-old cross-border payments industry for SMBs and freelancers in India. Welcome, Srivatsan.
Hey, thank you.
Movin's refused to come on the podcast till we have enough subscribers, given his celebrity status. So we'll make do with Srivatsan today. We partnered with Skydo back in 2022. I think this was even before the idea was seeded, and the company was kind of incorporated after our term sheet, if I remember it right. And Skydo has shown remarkable growth since then. As of last month, was processing $200 million of payments annualized, serves 5,000 customers, has saved them crores of rupees. And we are all very excited about talking to Srivatsan about how and why he's made this problem his vision statement. Srivatsan brings in years of experience working in his family's manufacturing business, and before that with Ola and Rupeek. So he deeply relates to the problem. Movin, prior to starting Skydo along with Srivatsan, had deep payment experience working at PhonePe, before that at Meesho, and before that at Ola. So welcome again, Srivatsan, to the podcast. Rewind us back to when you and Movin kind of thought of starting this business. I remember getting a call from you second half of 21, saying broadly we are thinking of doing something in some fintech area, B2B area, etc. So maybe take us back to that time on what was your discussions with Movin on, like why did you both first of all start together? What was that insight you were working off, and how did the idea come about?
When we started the company, in fact, when I came to Bangalore, I have to go a few years behind. When I came to Bangalore in 2018, I came with the idea of wanting to start something in the technology space. I was already an entrepreneur then. I was running my family-owned business, which is where I was a second-generation entrepreneur, trying to scale up what my father and his co-founders had built. And I was doing fairly well for myself, well-settled business, which was growing consistently year on year, no debt, profitable business. But I felt like the non-linearity was missing. And what I really wanted after some deep thought was to have impact at a large scale. So the business was having impact, but it was not at the scale that I really wanted. And I kind of, after a lot of introspection, talking to mentors, etc., came to the conclusion that this will happen only if I build a technology-led business. Right? That's where really non-linearity will kick in. So I moved to Bangalore, worked in a few startups for some time, just to familiarize myself with the space, make sure that I'm a fit in this ecosystem, first of all, and I build friends here, reconnect with old friends, and so on. Movin was my colleague at Ola. And we worked very closely together. I was, in fact, his manager, so we had a great working relationship. And since then, we've always been friends through our different journeys. And 2021, just before or just after the wave 2, where he was stuck actually in his hometown, and he came back to Bangalore, so we caught up just casually. And then, over the conversations in the evening, we realized that, we were both at an interesting place in our careers. I was actually heading business at Rupeek at that time, and Movin was doing quite well for himself, leading one of the important product areas in PhonePe.
Of course.
But both of us had an entrepreneurial past. For me, it was like the very purpose of coming to Bangalore was to build something. For Movin, it was that he had already started up once. His previous company did not scale as much as he had expected, so he always had that itch that at some point I'll need to build again. Now, specifically, I think we landed on cross-border payments through a sequence of I would say both top-down and bottom-up thinking. Movin was in payments, I was in lending, and between these two, for us, it was clearly that payments had a very big advantage for young companies which were more tech-oriented.
Of course.
Because of recurring revenue, and because of the fact that you could actually stand up to the big boys using technology. Whereas in lending, the big boys have a very, very significant starting advantage over you.
Correct.
So that kind of made us feel like, hey, we have an advantage if we choose payments. It's also recurring revenue. It's great. And that was one thing that I kind of missed in my lending business. So maybe, this is exciting. So that was like one thing that really made us feel, we should look at payments more thoroughly. Since 2012, 2013, I've actually been exporting consistently in my family business. So I had 5-6 years of experiencing all of these pains. So I felt like, okay, let's actually explore this a little deeper and see if exporters today also have similar problems, or, like how UPI has made life easy for consumer payments, maybe something has happened in the business-to-business payments world. So that's how we kind of narrowed down on payments and cross-border and said, let's actually explore this pain point, which I believe was real a few years back. Is it still real now?
Makes sense.
Did a few dipsticks, talked to some people and realized that, nothing has changed. Things are as painful as they always were. So there is something for us. I think that's pretty much where we kind of came to you and said, here is where we stand, and this is something that's cooking.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can only imagine for businesses how hairy this is and how high stakes a game this is, right? For a lot of businesses, this is their income. I mean, as an individual, whenever I've done these LRS transfers and remittances, it just felt such a intransparent world because I have no idea about the rates. So all these rails, I can't even trace the money. It almost feels like for 1 or 2 days I lose the money and I'm like paranoid, where does this money go? So I can imagine how much transparency in both turnaround times, tracing where the money is, rates help. So I mean that sounds like a very relevant problem to solve for. But tell me in simple words for everyone who's listening in now, what really is, in the most simple terms possible, what really is Skydo's proposition, what really is the product, and what do you stand for?
So essentially when somebody pays another person, the very, very simple thing that happens is somebody's bank account gets debited and another person's bank account gets credited. But to make this payment happen, there needs to be a network which is able to process this payment or process this information, right? In the case of domestic payments, like we all are familiar with UPI now, so let me start with the UPI example. Your UPI app is a payment aggregator, so they basically help you connect to the network. Whereas both the sending bank, which is your bank account from which money is debited, and the receiving bank, which is the merchant's bank, are different from the payment aggregator. The payment aggregator is just making sure that everybody talks to each other. I think a similar solution does not exist in international payments, and that is one of the fundamental reasons why there is so much of pain in international payments, where when somebody sends a payment, they first don't know what are the accounting conventions in the receiving geography. So different countries have different naming conventions for bank account. There is IBAN, there is SWIFT code, and there is bank codes and so on. To people who are very used to working in one geography, the banking codes of another geography might almost sound unintelligible, right? So the problem starts there. Then international payments are typically not easily available on internet banking in most countries and for most bank accounts. So when you try to pay somebody in another country, you might have to actually specially request that feature from your bank, sometimes even required to visit the branch even in this day and age, and so on. So these are all some problems on the sending side. On the receiving side, before coming to the receiving side, then when money actually has to move across borders, what's required is some central bank in between, which actually can handle multiple currencies. Because if you're a small bank in one particular country, you are only working in that currency. So there are these international banks like Citibank or Standard Chartered and so on, who are global money movers. So they actually have balances in multiple currencies, and they kind of make the market, or they kind of deal in these currencies. So these banks are called correspondent banks, and every payment that originates in some country in some currency has to pass via one of these correspondent banks in order to go and reach another country. So in this, what happens is transparency gets lost. So the receiver does not know how much money was sent, how much money got deducted in fees in between, how much money was received, at what rate of exchange did I receive my currency into my country, into my currency, and so on. So that's kind of what we are fighting against. So what we decided was, when we said we'll help small businesses, we said small businesses neither have the time, nor the sophistication, nor the extensive relationships with banks to be able to solve all these problems themselves. So let's make it easy for them. So with Skydo, what happens is, when somebody needs to receive an international payment, it's almost the same as receiving a local payment. So when you run a business within India and you have to get paid from some customer, the only thing that you need to do is raise an invoice and tell them to pay you. Everything else just happens automatically.
Correct.
Money comes into your bank account. We wanted to make the international payment experience exactly the same. We said, if somebody in another country is paying, they should not have any international complications. They should be able to pay locally. And similarly, you should, as a receiver, not worry about receiving money internationally. You should think that somebody locally is paying me. So can we be that network which abstracts away all this complication and make it easy for both the sender and receiver, for both of whom it now feels like I am paying locally, I am receiving locally, and somebody else is taking care of all the complication.
No, so that's a very helpful explanation of your product, Srivatsan. So maybe, contextualize for me, like, how does life of a customer really change once they use Skydo and move from whatever their current alternatives are?
See, broadly, a customer now who's doing international business has three alternatives. One, they can use wire transfer from their bank, ICICI, HDFC, whatever bank they work with. Second is, they can actually use international payment apps like PayPal, Stripe, and so on. And the third is, there are B2B specific apps which are also globally popular, like Payoneer or Ping Pong and so on. We believe that the way we have built Skydo, it takes the best of all these, what all these guys have to offer, and has actually made sure that this is one product that is definitely better than what their alternative is. So banks are not transparent in their tracking of the payments. So you don't know, like you mentioned, payment can get stuck for a couple of days and nobody is able to tell you where the payment is. Banks are also not transparent on the FX markup that they charge, and every bank only can answer for what they did. And like I told you, there are multiple banks involved in this chain. So ultimately, as a customer, you are left wondering, okay, did this money get deducted by the sender's bank, or by the intermediary bank, or my bank, and why have I got so much less than what I should have got? On the other extreme, if you look at a PayPal or a Stripe or any other credit card processor, they're very expensive, right? And it might work for really small ticket size transactions or one-off transactions. But if you're a consistent exporter who's getting all your revenue through this one single mode, then you will feel like I'm losing 6, 8, 7% of my revenue in just my payment fees, and that's too much, because it's not like all your revenue is your profit, right? From your revenue you also have to take care of costs. So this is taking away 6, 8% of your revenue, which means it's taking away 30, 40% of your margin, which is a huge amount of money for anybody to lose. Then the B2B apps like a Wise or a Payoneer or a Ping Pong, I think frankly they do something similar to what we do. However, their product and processes are not really tailored to what an Indian exporter needs, whether it is from a onboarding point of view or a compliance point of view, or the documentation that the customer needs for taking care of their GST refunds and so on. Plus, we are here, we are available on WhatsApp, on customer support and so on. Unlike some of these global platforms where you'll have to write to a international email ID and wait for responses and so on. I think that's how we try to differentiate ourselves from everybody. We've picked the best of what the industry has to offer and probably made it better.
And so how's the progress been so far since 22 when you started early to now? Where has Skydo reached? What are capabilities you've built? What are some headline numbers you've reached?
Yeah. You know this very well. Financial services businesses take a lot of infrastructure building. So in our case, because we are going to be handling customers' money, you first need the regulator to authorize you or approve you to be able to do this. In our case, the regulator is RBI, right? So RBI had a payment aggregator scheme for domestic payments by then, but for international payments, the regulation was still evolving when we started. There was a regulation as a predecessor to the payment aggregator scheme, in which we applied, waited for a few months to get approved, and then started. So it took almost a year for us to build and launch the product. And since then, we have been in operation for the last 2 years, and we've seen tremendous progress. We've actually now onboarded a lot more than 10,000 businesses. These are across multiple scales. Like these could be as small as 1-person companies to as large as doing several hundreds of thousands of dollars of exports. And we process about $200 million of payments annually right now. That's our scale. In terms of what all we can do, we can help customers receive money from about 80 different countries today across 32 currencies. And while most of our payments do come in from the expected large markets like the US, UK, Europe, Australia, Singapore, and so on, we do see payments coming in from multiple countries. In fact, I think at the last count, we have processed payments from about 60 different countries. For customers, the value proposition is simplicity, transparency, and convenience. While obviously, all of this happening and they are saving money compared to any other option. In terms of team, I think we started with just the 2 founders, working out of Elevation's office. In fact, I think we got to a team size of about 6 till we finally had to move out of Elevation's office. Now we have a team of 62. Spread across. Initially, our hires were all product engineering and design folks. Then once we had the early understanding of, okay, what are we building, who are we targeting, and what's the go-to-market, then we gradually started building the sales and marketing team. Now, it's a good mix of sales, marketing, operations, customer support, compliance, and technology folks.
No, it's been wonderful to see you build this team very methodically. Actually, you and Movin, I think, do a terrific job of both figuring out who you want to hire and hiring at the right stage, and we'll come to that. I think one thing I just remembered before we go to more meta questions is, I think you were one of the first folks to hire a compliance guy very early, compliance person very early. And as you rightly mentioned, regulator, compliance, and we had this all-team podcast, a few weeks back where compliance and regulation was a big issue. Of course, in every boardroom and every investor company in fintech, these have been discussions. So maybe a little bit of your worldview on compliance. Why did you hire, one of your earliest hires was compliance. I remember you recently got a full-fledged license to be this PACB. You've done a lot of work to make sure that the business and processes are compliant, but also like you are representing rightfully to the regulators, you're making those rounds, you're working with the right advisors. So maybe a little bit of that advice and worldview of compliance. And I think both Movin and you are very acutely sensitive to that. So share that learning with all of us.
Yeah. In fact, when we started the company, one of the founding tenets for us was we should do businesses which are not very easy. Right? It was.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So one of the things that we used as an analogy was, a smart kid actually wants a difficult question paper in an exam, because then that clearly differentiates them from everybody else. So we said, likewise, if we are willing to do the hard work, and if we are willing to actually, work hard and build deep infrastructure, deep capabilities, then it means that we are actually making ourselves get into a rarefied competitive zone, not something that anybody and everybody could start. This was our worldview, right? And so we said, in fact, when the PA regulation was extended to cross border also, which happened in late 23, we were very happy. We said, this actually is going to game change our business, because this now makes us have a seat at the table with the regulator. We are no longer now sponsored by a bank, but we are actually,
a license holder by yourself.
A license holder by ourselves, who can go to banks and work as an equal partner.
Truly partner, yeah.
From the beginning, we have always acutely been aware of regulation being an important enabler to the business, not a blocker, right? And once we decided that, then it was fairly obvious for us that we should build the business in the right way from the beginning. In fact, we hired a finance controller very, very early in our journey.
Of course,
when most people were actually telling us, use a CFO,
outsource kar do.
CFO outsourcing firm, and get a third-party accountant to manage your books and so on. But we felt like it's okay. We are not hiring the controller for writing, tally entries. We are hiring the controller so that the data room is ready from day one.
Yeah.
And for me, the data room is not just going to be looked at by current and future investors. My data room is going to be looked at by my regulator, and equally importantly by my bank partners. So one of the things that helps us move money across the world is actually partnership with very large financial institutions. In fact, in the entire chain of who's sending the money and who's receiving the money, Skydo is the smallest player, right? Skydo is a newborn baby, 2 years old.
For now.
Whereas
For now.
everybody else, which is the sending bank who helps us collect money, or the receiving bank, or the regulator, they're all big daddies in this game.
Of course.
And for them, risk management is almost as important, or probably even more important
Super critical,
than new revenue generation. So when we go to a large bank and we tell them that, hey, here are my books, it's looking clean. Here is my process, you can audit it. Here is my compliance head who has like several years of experience in this particular firm and so on. It immediately puts them at ease that, hey, I am actually talking to somebody who knows their stuff. In our category, we are the first company to get this license.
It's amazing.
It's all been due to this compliance first mindset.
Yeah.
In fact, I recently wrote a LinkedIn post about it, which is, even our sales team is compliance first, right? So our sales team would never, ever, even a really new salesperson who's just joined the company like a few weeks back, would never onboard a customer who does not have the right documentation or who does not have the right use case, etc. Because they know that, that's not the way we work.
No, I know a lot of systems you've designed are to be like that. So I think it's fantastic, and I think today's world very, very important. So, the here and now is very clear of what you're doing. But what's the what's the overall larger vision for Skydo, the way you and Movin see it?
Yeah. In fact, I think you might remember, but when we first pitched Skydo to you, we said we want to be the cross-border operating system, right? And I like that word, operating system, and I think that's the one-line encapsulation of what we want to be. So in an increasingly global world, there will also be the need for having that particular cross-border bank or cross-border enabler, which can help you do everything globally. So yeah, I need to pay some contractors who work for me in another country. I need to receive my export revenues. I also need to keep some money in a foreign currency so that I can make payments next year. Hey, I also want a card so that I can make my digital payments without the transaction failing. There are so many use cases. And then on top of it, layer taxation in different countries. How do I take care of it? How do I incorporate entities in different countries? Okay, I'm a SaaS company. I have a big contract with the government of Malaysia, but they want me to actually open an entity in that country. How can I open it easily? Once I receive payments there, how can I bring it into my home entity? So like so many complicated things are now going on in the minds of really small companies.
Correct.
If we can become this cross-border bank, which allows people to receive money, send money, probably even hold money, make payments out of that, comply, potentially even apply and get credit for their international payments. So that's the vision for us. We want to be saying that, okay, you can bank with anybody in your home country, but if you want to do international payments, you definitely have to have a Skydo account.
So basically, overarching platform which solves through both financial products and software products, anything that they think of when they do cross-border.
Exactly.
And then plugs into wherever partnerships are needed. You have your own licenses.
Correct.
Some place you'll build substance over time in different geographies. I mean, that's a very exciting, large vision. Like that's why we partnered with you guys. Great. And how did you guys really go about finding your first 10, 20 customers?
Yeah, that was interesting because initially our hypothesis, primarily driven by my own experience being a manufacturer, was that our initial customers would come from the manufacturing world. And we toured all the different manufacturing hubs from the north to the south, ended up eating a lot of great food from across the country, from parathas to dosa and so on. But ultimately realized that for the kind of product we were offering, which is a simple, easy to onboard digital offering, the best product market fit came from, customers who were actually services exporters. So these were like small technology companies,
Wow.
digital marketing agencies, and so on. And this discovery was a little serendipitous. So we put out a tweet saying, hey, we are building in this space. If you have problems, reach out. And we got a lot of responses, most of them from services exporters. And I think, in fact, our first customer came from that tweet, right? And then once we realized that this is a segment that we have to go after, we realized that a lot of our friends of friends were actually technology exporters. So they were, engineers having worked in large companies for a few years, then went back to their hometown, started a small technology company, employed a bunch of engineers. They were exporting software globally. So I think the first 20, 30 customers were mostly from our network, then friends of friends, and early referrals and word of mouth from these existing customers. I think we formed a cohort of 30, 40 customers and said, we want you to try out our product. There may be mistakes, but we want you to try and give us feedback. I think that approach helped a lot. We processed, I think, almost 2 months of payments without writing very much code. We just maybe did the very basic code required for the back end of interacting with banks and so on. But on the front end, which is the customer interface or the dashboard, etc., we handled it through emails and WhatsApp and spreadsheets till we really understood what the customer wanted, and then we wrote code for that.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. I mean, I've been to a few of your team events, and you've always been very kind to invite us all. And I think it's just fantastic to see, that bond and culture, and also performance orientation when it comes to it. So, so I think very, very strong early signs. You said a few kind words about us in between, which I really liked. So maybe I'll ask a self-serving question, which is, how was your, seed and further round fundraising experience? And then, why did you choose Elevation to partner with you? I mean, you had a few options.
Yeah, definitely in the first round we had a lot of options because those were, I think...
I remember those sleepless nights for me.
Those were actually very interesting times, right? The world was in COVID and, what is now called the zero interest rate environment. But honestly, I think you were the first investor I spoke to. A lot of the others I spoke to were friends in the industry who helped us brainstorm. I think you might remember that when I spoke to you first time also, I told you that don't look at this as an investor, just tell me as a friend, is there an opportunity here? And then I think we had a few conversations. What I really liked about those early conversations was at no point of time did I feel like, Elevation, wants to invest in it because, they want to, push some agenda or they want to, fulfill some checkbox in their thesis or whatever. It always felt to me like you had a good understanding of the space. You felt like this was something that you were interested in, but at the same time you let the thought process evolve. I remember the first meeting we came to you with a sheet of paper.
I remember that.
Right? There was no PPT. There was just like some lines written where we said this is what we want to do. And then from there, within about a 6 to 8 week period between December, January of that time frame, we actually spoke to a lot of companies. We built our understanding. You and Vasudha from Elevation side also, kept sparring with us constantly. I felt like it was a very collaborative, 6 weeks. That process left me, very happy and, a very pleasant experience. Secondly, I think even when it came to, okay, there is now broader interest. There are other funds who are, keen to talk, etc. You were actually, I would say, very graceful to let me actually have those conversations. There was no like, sign today or the offer is gone kind of type of deadline. Maybe I think, on that same note, it'll be good to know why you guys invested in Skydo, right? What was your, investment thesis? What was your view of the sector, the space, the opportunity, the founders? Because on day one, unlike many other companies which usually have a prototype or a working model, in our case, we couldn't have shown you any working proof. So how did you guys make up your mind?
Yeah, no, very, I would say very similar response to how you responded, which is some of these things evolve and grow organically and keep increasing your excitement. I think one of the things we discuss in Elevation a lot is like every subsequent meeting should keep increasing your excitement. That organically, feels like it's the right kind of deal to do. I mean, there's a lot of analytical stuff you can do, but at seed stage, there's only so much you can do. I think few things. I think one is when I got the call from you in 21, and I was like quite excited because I had known you for a while. You have a stellar reputation in the ecosystem. You had a stellar reputation in McKinsey. I remember I tried to introduce you and Archit at Clear for a long time, and you were choosing between places to go to, and we were quite sad that you weren't. So overall, like I had it was like I really wanted to see if we can really work together because just by your reputation, you're exactly the kind of person I want to work with. I think, and then when you told me Movin's doing this with you, like Movin has had a great reputation. I know a bunch of people. I mean, Movin has a big fan following, anyways. But I know a bunch of people who know Movin well, and clearly very, very strong. Not just professional, but just an individual. And it felt when we met you guys are very complementary to each other, and also a relationship. And you may remember this. Like we had a lot of conversations more on interpersonal stuff. Like I think it felt like a relationship built on very, very deep trust and respect for each other, and that's very important. I mean, these are either lonely journeys or journeys in which you may diverge. Like I just felt very comfortable. I think you're very right. I mean, the idea was very raw when we first started chatting, but I mean, at least for us, this whole payments, cross-border payments, verticalization of payments, or simplification of payments, call it what you may. Like some of this was clearly an idea and domain which was interesting. B2B payments overall was very interesting. I remember our first meeting, which was obviously a few things, but I also like that process in seed stage a lot more, which is problem solving and evolving. It also didn't feel like you said for us, like it didn't feel talking to you and Movin that it was like, look, we are doing something in broad realm, tell us yes or no right now, or we're going somewhere. Like I think you folks were also very open to collaboratively problem solve, gave us enough time to both see your thought process evolving, which is both. I mean, to me, it's a great sign, and I get to do this before I've cut the check. I think it's fantastic. So you allowed us that insight, and as a combination, you both are fantastic. I feel those founder market fit. So it's an area we were interested in. You two individuals who we had a lot of respect for outside in basis what we had heard, and obviously that has only increased since we worked together. And the organic evolution of brainstorming, problem solving felt like it's moving in the right direction. So that first meeting by itself is not the meeting to really judge by, but really the slope of the curve of saying how far do we evolve. So I remember distinctly around this area only we had this one meeting in Jan or Feb where we had this blunt question to each other saying, if you are ready, we are ready, should we then figure out? And I think that took 4, 5, 6 interactions to reach there. So I mean, very, very glad that it happened though.
No, thank you. I mean, equally excited and happy.
Wonderful. Maybe, I mean, this has been a fascinating chat. I mean, last question from my side, which is any broad advice to founders who are starting up overall, either in fintech, both given your deep operating experience and whatever you've seen over the last 3-4 years at Skydo?
Sure. I think this is day one for us, and it will be day one for a while to come, because I think the vision is large and we really want to build a global company coming out of India. But there are a few things that both during my working career as an employee as well as my entrepreneurial journey with my family business and Skydo, I've kind of like felt are important. One is, I think you should be true to your nature, right? That's more important. Doing entrepreneurship because it's the in thing or it's a cool thing or because it's great to go on Shark Tank, etc. I think that should not be the case, right? It should basically be something that truly feels part of your nature. Similarly, it has been my experience that always having people around you helps. Some people might say it cramps my style, etc., etc. But I think on the balance, most people would really benefit from having diversity of thought, complementarity of experience, and skill sets. So, finding a great person to build it with. I also would say, and I know this is probably not a cool thing to say on a VC podcast, but I really also think people should think whether they really need external capital. Yeah. Right? It's very important to think, what kind of business am I building? Is there sufficient non-linearity in it? Because if there is non-linearity, then external capital is 100% important and useful, because then that capital can truly make a difference between whether you're building a tiny company which will go nowhere, or a company which will really do something. Because for example, in our space, there is no way we can start a business unless a few big banks agree to collect money on my behalf, and a regulator agrees to allow me to play the game. And for all of this, it's the services equivalent of building a cement plant. You can't sell even a gram of cement unless you build a plant. Similarly, you can't even move $1 unless you have these things ready. So here, I felt like capital was definitely required. But there might be another business where probably you don't need capital.
Very fair.
So I think that's the third question. And then once that is decided, the fourth and most important thing is actually who you partner with. And when I say who you partner with, it's not just the capital provider, but also which kind of business partners you get into relationships with, what kind of early employees you bring in. I think putting inordinate amount of thought and focus into the kind of entities, companies you're partnering with is the next thing which is important. And finally, I would say, building a long-term value-driven or values-driven business. And by value, I also say what is the value you're adding to customers is very important, because that is your reason to exist as a business. And sometimes you may succeed quickly, sometimes it may take many years to succeed, and many times you may not even succeed, which is okay. But if your basis is actually built on strong fundamentals, that there is a reason for my company to exist, and that reason is that I'm going to add value to this customer, then you're starting on strong fundamentals. Similarly, every partnership you enter into, every relationship you enter into, it's values driven. Honestly, success or failure doesn't matter, because then you've done it the right way, you've done it your way.
For the right reasons.
For the right reasons. And I'm a big CSK fan, and I'm a big Dhoni fan. And like Dhoni always says, if you trust the process and if you do the process well, outcomes hardly matter. And most of the time, you are also getting good outcomes.
Makes sense. That's wonderful, wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Srivatsan, for sharing your journey and learnings. To all our listeners who are tuning in, if you're building in fintech, financial services, please reach out to us. Thank you for tuning in to the Day One podcast.